What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we got Kevin of Venomous Concept. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, buddy. How's it going?
Oh, hanging in there. How are you doing in this age of quarantine that we're in?
I'm busy being essential.
Busy being essential. I love that.
Yeah, or disposable. I can't really figure it out just yet.
I think even though we're here to talk about the new album, I already think you have a concept for the next album already. That is essential or disposable. Like, stick with that.
Yes, it's a very fine line.
Exactly.
Actually, it's excellent marketing as far as I'm concerned. It's just like, it's a way to get those trolls in the Amazon warehouse to feel important.
Exactly. Wow, man, you're just full of the inspiration today. I feel like the making of the next album will be on this interview.
I'm here to disappoint everybody.
Awesome. But with the new album, Politics versus the Erection, it's scheduled to come out August 28th. Do you just want to talk about what the thought process was going into the making of this album? Was there kind of a preconceived idea, or was there a lot of improvising involved? How was the making of this record all along?
We were working on this record that we just finished recording. It seemed a bit of a gap between the last record and this one, and so we decided to do something a little different and add some more elements into this record to make it a more transition to the next record. There was some thinking involved, but not much. And I think what we ended up doing is that we ended up just making a record. We just went about it in old school terms and just went into the studio with some ideas and just put them down. Shane would be working out a riff, or John, whatever, would be working out a riff and translating it to Danny, and then they would run through the song 2 or 3 times and move around some arrangements here, there, and everywhere, and then we just tracked it. It was more like a knee-jerk reaction kind of thing, where we wanted to get a sound, capture a fire. You know what I'm saying? Like get some energy, encapsulate it, and versus over analyzing it. It was sort of opposite of what's going on with recording nowadays, where people just sit there and analyze, and they edit their drums and they move their drums over here, and they and this, that, and the other. This one's really raw. I mean, it sounds big, but it's raw. I mean, you're going to hear the mistakes, but with this kind of music, when you get too clinical, it becomes boring and soulless to me. So, we wanted to do something different. We did something different.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's fair to say, when the first singles that you released off of this, such as Simia Flu and Eliminate and Lemonade, could these serve as a clear representation of what all 13 songs on this album is going to sound like, or is this just the tip of the iceberg?
There's a little bit of this and a little bit of that on it, I've heard people, there's stuff in the vein of Killing Joke. There's stuff that, VC has always been about taking memories from certain elements of our childhood and creating music out of it, I grew up a lot in the punk scene, and Shane grew up a lot in the heavy metal scene. So, sort of, that's the only guideline with VC, is somewhere in there, and because we're blissfully unsuccessful, there's a freedom to do whatever you want to do. They don't expect the next Cannibal Corpse record or something like that, Cannibal Corpse is probably one of the only bands that I know of that can get away with being Cannibal Corpse every fucking record.
Yeah, or maybe AC/DC too.
Well, AC/DC, that's the same. They do what they do so good that you don't want to hear them do anything but that.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I get bored with some bands, and I won't name bands, but I get bored with certain bands that just create the same thing over and over again. So
Yeah.
I've never been all that successful with music in terms of money or whatever, but I've been successful at changing things up record to record. And you look at any of the Brutal Truth records, they don't look alike, they don't sound alike, the songs don't sound, they're not the same kind of music. You know, they just kind of move around and stuff like that. I'm more comfortable. Maybe I have ADD. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not comfortable mixing things up record to record because I already completed that thought with that record. Why carry on with it?
Yeah. Well, is it fair to say that, with your experiences with Brutal Truth and Lock Up and, having Shane with the 45 other bands that he's in and Danny with, Napalm Death as well and now McCrath and so many other influences, does that at all influence for what Venomous Concept is all about? Or do you guys try to distance yourself from everything you've done previously with the making of...
No, it doesn't really have anything to do with Brutal Truth or Napalm, really, I wouldn't actually see Barney being apolitical about anything, but me, I just want to light politics on fire. Fuck them all,
Yeah. Well, you led me into the next question because I've interviewed a lot of bands that are very politically driven, such as Refused and Anti-Flag and a lot of other great bands that are really flying the forefront of political music. When it comes to political music, is there research conducted involved, or do you write maybe about your own personal experiences in a way?
Here's the thing, though, man. Okay, so you can be apolitical. I don't like the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. I think they're all idiots, and anyone who believes that these politicians have your interest in mind, they're obviously not paying attention to their lack of concern with the stimulus. Mm-hmm. You can be apolitical and still be politically conscious. I have opinions all day long. Don't get me wrong, but everyone does, and everyone's entitled to them. I make fun of my opinions, and my jokes are dark, but the thing is that my political opinion doesn't have much to do with anything that's going on right now or any solutions. You could say that Black Lives have made some progress and that sort of thing, but social media has gifted us the ability, well, just technology in general. How many phone numbers do you know?
None.
Okay, because it's in your contact information, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of, I could give you my phone number right now, 10 seconds later, you would not remember it.
Nope.
So technology, social media, whatever, it'll be the next subject, A lot of people jump up on bandwagons and sling flags because they need to feel better about their personal opinions and this, that, and the other. But whether or not they're lifers or committed to their ideals, there's precious few out there. So we'll see how long everyone holds on to the righteous flag of their political opinion.
Yeah.
And the thing is that it change comes from your everyday thinking and your everyday belief. And unfortunately, people have short attention spans, and they're gonna be on to the next subject matter and this, that, and the other. And I don't know. We could talk about Black Lives being brought up during this. This has been going on for a long time. Rodney King. We could talk about this all a long time, and we would have thought that we would have dealt with it back then. But when it quits being a hot fire topic for politicians, everything will slide back to where it was.
When it's no longer a calling card, nobody wants to call out.
Well, to a certain degree, man, they're on to the next calling. The thing is that you have to make changes in your life, and adversely, with all this fucking crap that you get through Facebook and everyone, the division that they've created for everyone to hate each other, I don't see any solutions in it. Here's the thing. They create a division amongst us so we don't question what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So while we're busy yelling at each other about our personal opinions that we've been sold into by whatever their message is and whatever party they're in, they get to pull off what they want to pull off. It is not a surprise to me that Bloomberg and that clown from Seattle and all the other millionaires or billionaires or whatever that got involved with the election, because all of a sudden they've realized that, holy shit, anyone can be president, man. And we can make laws for us and extend the 1% into the mega billionaires and make sure that the working class is busy yelling at each other while we're running game.
Yeah. And obviously the goal of Venomous Concept is to kind of inform the listener on the subject, right? It's not like you try to leave the album open to interpretation, in a way, right?
You mentioned Eliminate, no answers in a song. There's lyrics in there that are interpretive and some that are direct, I think that everyone's entitled to their own opinion. We're born with opinions and we'll die with them. But if you ever expect anyone to accept your line of thinking, you have to be willing to accept their line of thinking. And I think a lot of the problems with division is when the first words that come out are, "You're a fucking idiot." You completely diminish that person's life because it's their life experiences that create their opinions. And they're always going to be defensive. And you will never get them to come to your side of the fence and discuss and come up with what the two-party system should be, which is like the best of two different thinkings, the best solutions for modern problems. Now we're just in a world where everybody could use a little stimulus right now. I don't care if you're essential or been at home for the last 6 months. And red and blue are behaving as children do, and they're more pissed off at each other than making things better for us. So, in terms of like lyrical content, yes, there are some things that are specific, and then there's certain things to interpret. But I always welcome people to absorb information and music or whatever as they see it, how it suits them. If it makes them feel better about whatever, then that's the goal.
Yeah. Every single political band I've talked to, they always root their subject matter into the same thing, is that they encourage people to think for themselves and they welcome open discourse. I interviewed Heaven Shall Burn during the beginning of this whole pandemic, and they said, like, you don't have to agree with us. That's the point of the music. And I feel like you guys have a similar sort of principle.
Well, to me, that's the basis of punk rock. I grew up in a situation where in Atlanta back in the day, in the early 80s, there was the punk rockers, the skinheads, the weird metalhead extreme kids, and the cross dressers and this, that, and the other. There was the outsiders, and we were all outsiders, and we were all corralled into like one part of town, and everyone accepted everyone's thinking, or not their thinking, but accepted their opinions, because they came from whatever, I mean, certain things, racism and that sort of thing, were intolerable and unaccepted because strangely enough, we were all minorities. Growing up punk rock in the South is not really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It came with problems,
Yeah. Well, how do you define punk rock? Because I get a different answer every time. They say it's the message, they say it's the music, it's the imagery. To you, what makes punk ultimately punk?
It's in your heart. It's none of that.
Do you think it's something that you learn, or do you think you're born a punk?
to quote unquote grow up a few times and failed miserable at it. This is who I am. At a certain point, you got to accept who you are, man. And I've always lived outside the square, And I think that I don't think it's I don't know what I don't think it's a learned thing. I think it's just who you are. If you think differently, if in any capacity, like that makes you somewhat punk, Just because you put a safety pin through your ear doesn't make you punk.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you put on a uniform doesn't make you punk. Just because you sit in front of a microphone and preach for 5 minutes before the next song doesn't make you punk.
I'm really glad you mentioned that because, I'm 26 years old. So I grew up with, my punk that I grew up with, and a lot of old school punks are going to want to crucify me for this, but like I grew up with Blink-182 and Sum 41 and My Chemical Romance, and at that time that was my idea of punk before I looked up Sex Pistols or Dead Kennedys or something like that. So like I've always do you think that maybe it's harder for people who may have not have grown up with like the Sex Pistols or Dead Kennedys or even Napalm Death, do you think it's going to be harder for young kids to really get involved in the world of punk?
No, I just think their perception and how they transmit it's going to be different. It's just like nowadays, blogs, TikTok, this and the other. The format's totally different. When I was growing up, we tape traded. You looked in every Tuesday was record release day, and it was magical. And there was all sorts of mysteries that would happen. But nowadays, it's just different. I don't judge people how they evolve into punk because I don't define punk as someone who listens to Sex Pistols. I listen to punk as when I think of someone as punk, I think it comes from their heart. It comes from like who they are. Do they question things? Do they question authority? Here's a newsflash. I never liked cops. I never liked politicians. I always questioned their motives. Okay? Why? Because they're worth questioning. I know there are plenty of people that got into politics and cop work fucking nefariously. You know what I mean? Their intentions are not with the civic duty in mind,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think if you want to ask what punk is a free spirit, a free thinking animal who's able to make righteous choices for themselves and not fuck with anyone else's plan. You know what I mean? When I think fuck with anyone else's plan, it's like my way of getting through life. Life is fucking complicated and hard. It's hard for everyone, man. I mean, it's and forcing people to think your ideals sounds like a bore. It's just as fascist as the next, So, when someone sits up there and toots their horn for 5 minutes between songs, stuff like that doesn't interest me, man. I want to know, you as a human, what do you do in your private life? That's what makes you punk, not what you're presenting on stage. I played with a ton of straight edge bands back in the day that were on Victory, and there was always one or two of those dudes that would drag you around the corner. Hey, man, smoke a little weed, please, man, please. Just don't tell anyone. Just don't tell anyone.
Yeah, don't use it as a calling card or as an image. If you're going to be punk, you gotta believe in it and practice what you preach.
That's what I mean. It comes from your heart, man. If you're straight edge, then fuck. I'm hilariously enough, I am. I don't sell it, but I quit drinking 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm vegan. I'm pretty hardcore vegan in terms of I just eat beans and greens. I don't eat processed food. I don't eat pasta, and I don't eat bread, and I eat beans, greens, fruits, vegetables, shit like that. But do I preach that shit on someone else? No, not really. I mean, Shane's a carnivore. I love animals. This is my personal belief. This is who I am.
Yeah.
You know, so
Of course.
if that makes me punk, then that makes me punk. I don't sit up in front of a group of people and tell them what to do with their lives.
Because that wouldn't be punk anymore.
That wouldn't be punk anymore. That would be fascist. That would be live this ideal, and if you don't think this way, fuck you.
Yeah, that's not punk at all, and I don't care what the hell you're preaching.
No, I'm just saying, like, you know, live your life, help others, be kind. You can get confused in that message, but life, we've realized in the virus, is hard enough.
Yeah.
And it's time to forget the division that's created and marketed to you, and everyone learn to care about each other in a certain capacity. That to me is what punk is. And that, if you go to New York hardcore scene, any of those dudes will tell you all day long, they're family. Whether it be Jimmy G or Roger or any of the old schoolers versus what's considered new schoolers. I don't care that you got into punk via Blink 182. It doesn't matter to me, man. That doesn't make, because you listen to punk, just because you listen to Blink 182 doesn't mean that you're punk. You know, that's you're punk because your spirit. That you're punk because you're sitting here on the phone getting promoting music, and you're fanatical about the things that interest you, and you have opinions, and all this shit comes from your heart.
That really means a lot to hear you say, and to anybody who's called me a poser because of my Disturbed tattoo, you could eat shit.
Dude, we all have fucking whatever tattoo. That's what comes with growing up, man.
Of course.
Period.
Of course. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today, and thank you during this difficult time giving us a brand new album that I think will help people, exert, a lot of their anger in a very healthy way. Just obviously, thanks to a certain virus that I'm not naming on my outlet because I don't want to give it any publicity. Obviously, when all this is over, because eventually live music will return, can we maybe be expecting Venomous Concept to bring this material out on the road?
I mean, we'll see, though. I mean, like, all these things change. You were talking about how people perceive, how they get information and create music and this and the other. Things are going to change, I mean, outside of, like, all the stuff that we just talked about, like, I know that everybody really wants everything to get back to normal, but I don't know whether there will be a normal anymore, or whatever you want to call a new norm, or this, that, or the other. Yeah. But I will tell you that, like, if there's a room that has 500 capacity and you're only allowed to put 200 people in that room, there's a mathematical equation that has to be met for bands that travel abroad and this, that, and the other, whether it be plane flights and transportation and gear rental, things like that, booking agents, promoters, all these people that have their hand in that ticket, and there's only 200 of them being sold, and the premise is to sell 500 of them. How does that math work? I don't know. But I will tell you it's going to be a lot longer and a lot harder for the touring circuit to return to any kind of what you would consider like normalcy, because things change, and they have changed.
Yeah.
Social distancing, capacity limits, price of tickets. I don't know. These are all going to change, and we may have to ingest music differently. The kind of gigs that I do, or 500 capacity rooms with 550 people in the room, and everybody up in my face, fucking giving a good go and having a good laugh and enjoying themselves. And I don't know whether they'll ever allow that again.
I think basement shows are going to return, because basement shows are obviously not 500 cap. Have a basement with 50 people in it, play like a matinee show and then a nighttime show. I think that will be something that'll come back.
I think you're going to see the book your own life, maximum rock and roll return to backyard parties. We did backyard shows back in the day, backyard shows and warehouse parties and that sort of thing. than 4 basement gigs.
Yeah, well, I live in the middle of Manhattan. We don't have backyards here. So can you do a show can you do a show at Madison Square Park, please?
Well, that was out in California. They did the backyard gigs. That's where all the old, like, LA punk came out of the backyard.
Do it on a rooftop. That's what you got to do. You got to do rooftop gigs.
Yeah, but I think that it's gonna. Well, I mean, you know, in New York back when rave first started, there was gigs in the outlaw gigs and Brooklyn Bridge and shit like that. You know, I think you're gonna see a return to like DIY cred, because I think the people that actually like that whole tour circuit thing, that's going to have a lot of stumbles and falls. There's going to be a lot of money lost. Things like Live Nation, I don't know whether they'll make it, you know. I hope they don't, to be quite honest. But you know, for everyone to say that, like, you know, you get a lot of questions like, what are you going to do, like, when they start opening gigs up at the end of the year, the beginning of the year? And I'm like, man, I don't know whether that's going to happen, man. I know. Well, here in America, man, the big thing is like, will there be any independent venues left? You know, because they're all going to go bankrupt, man. The government's not looking after those businesses, the arts and stuff like that. They don't give a shit.
Yeah. Well, I will say though, that and maybe this is just me trying to be optimistic, or maybe I'm in just blatant denial. So you could tell me to shut the fuck up at any point, but. You know, New York City right now has gone to quite a bit of shit lately, like, and everything, and like rents are actually supposedly going to start going down eventually. Maybe we'll have more of those DIY clubs hop up. So you never know.
Oh yeah, ABC No Rio, that sort of thing, man. I mean, like
CBGBs.
You know, oh God, you know how I miss.
Yeah,
you know,
I was 13 when it closed, so I never got to see it. So.
I played so many gigs there. I can close my eyes and walk around the room, and just by the softness of the floor, know where I was, man. I mean, like, honestly, I miss that place. It was like my living room. I lived down the street from it. I lived on you know, down on Avenue C and First. So, like, you know, like
right near where I live.
Yeah, I mean, I was there 4 or 5 nights a week, man. You know. Yeah. It's just like, I don't even want to think about it, because it's heartbreaking thinking that it doesn't exist anymore, because it was so precious and so beautiful. And yeah, being a young man, I didn't fully appreciate what was in front of me, you know. Yeah. And now that it's gone, and it's just sad it's just sad.
Yeah. But metal, you know, rock, metal, punk, as long as if there's a drive and there's a will, there will be a way. But thank you so much.
I think you are correct, man. It's going to have to come from DIY, man. Everybody's going to have to regroup on how they do things. If they want to do this, they have to, like, change the way they do things and the way they think. You know, I was there in the beginning when all that shit. Real Truth used to take fucking trains up and down the East Coast, and we'd borrow people's gear, and we'd get, like, you know, $40 ticket up to you know, Providence to go do a show. You know, there was no booking agents back there. John McEntee fucking booked a punk rock gig, and there you went. You know, and if you showed up and they gave you food, they gave you food. If there was fucking money, you made money. But it's gonna be like that. Everybody's gonna have to be okay with starting over.
Yep. Well, that's a cycle of life. You know, art is life. I've always said that art is life, just like anything else. And there's stuff that grows, there's stuff that develops, there's stuff that dies, sometimes prematurely, and then there's a new life that comes along with it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. But thank you so much again for your time, Kevin. I really appreciate it. Everybody, we are here with Kevin of Venomous Concept, Politics versus the Erection, coming out via Season of Mist, August 28th. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We will see you next time.